Rethink Retail aficionados, captains of commerce, tech titans. I am here with the astounding SVP of Retail and Commerce at MasterCard, Emily Kroner. Welcome to the Rethink Retail podcast.
Absolutely, thanks for having me.
Lovely to have you here, and thank you for joining us here on a very sweltering day. So
hot.
I would love, because we're an educational podcast, right? And the audience is really thought leaders, folks who want to learn, teach, do, but really want to be on the bleeding edge of sort of what's next, what's happening in retail. You're such a prime example of that, as is a lot of the things happening at MasterCard right now. But I'd love to start with like where you started, and maybe how it brought you to where you are, and maybe how you think it colors what you do.
Great. I always say the best careers are the most unplanned and not straight careers, and I think that that is, led me to exactly where I need to be. So I started my career in consulting, doing strategy consulting for partners across different industries, everything from government to retail to CPGs to insurance and health. And I loved it because the commonality that I then kind of took across my career was this fascination between the human psychology of what art and science kind of can create. So I was at Accenture, loved my time there, and then got a great opportunity to work for a company called dunnhumby, looking after various parts of strategy and loyalty for that business. And they were just an incredible company who really understood the psychology of the consumer and was doing some groundbreaking things around data. So that common thread kind of kept me there. And then I got a call from MasterCard about 8 years ago, and they were doing some groundbreaking things in terms of really innovating in technology, thinking about how to best leverage data to help retailers and brands think about who their customers are, how they can best treat and engage their customers. And so I took a jump into that next foray in that next industry, but the common element was human psychology and the art and science of consumer behavior.
Is it a straight up 50-50 on the art and science, would you say?
I think it depends. I think, we've pivoted over the years. We went really science heavy and sometimes forgot in retail it is about just the art of what customers want and what they're feeling and what motivates them. And it does have to be this really healthy blend to really make sure that we're meeting customers where they're at, but also from a brand and retail perspective that we're able to effectively be able to operationalize and deliver that. So that's where the art and science really comes together in retail.
Yeah, I mean, during my time at Walmart, launching a couple billion-dollar businesses, John Furner, the U.S. President and CEO, was famous for saying, don't show the customer your org chart, right? Which is basically, if the customer can see the sausage being made, you've done something wrong, right? And so I think about that especially with regards to everything under the hood, in terms of technology and operations, that has to be true and has to be great, right? To make this customer service experience better and better and better. Certainly, it's becoming very true with AI, right? But companies like MasterCard and other places you've been have been doing it for a long, long time, right? And, maybe just spout off, like, what's making you excited lately? Like when you think about the innovations driving customer experience and operational excellence in the retail sector.
Yeah, I think a lot has really changed and accelerated over the last couple of years. And that's been really exciting to watch from a retail perspective. I think we knew customers were shifting across channels. We knew that there was going to be an implication of that. Obviously, on the back end of global pandemic, that really accelerated our path to that. But it also brought that human element into different channels, which is, I think, has really pushed companies to think about technology and data and analytics and how they can achieve that balance. So things that are really exciting to me right now, it's how do you take AI and data and put it into action, right? Measurable results. We have a platform called Test and Learn that we work with our partners to really think about how do you execute various different strategies, whether that be real estate decisions or merchandising decisions or marketing changes, and do that in a systemic way where you can measure the incrementality of those changes and make really smart decisions. So it allows you to think about how you can be agile and adaptive to some of these changing consumer behaviors, but do it in a way that makes sense and also is scalable, right? Particularly because retailers and brands are really having to be efficient with cost right now. So that's something that's really exciting. Obviously technology has become a really good way to get to that level of scale, right? So, whether you think about the average loyalty customer has 12 loyalty programs that they're engaged with.
12, really?
12 loyalty programs that the average customer has. So how do you maintain that level of consumer engagement, in such a cluttered space? Well, you do that by really operationalizing around a great platform and giving consumers, kind of next generational loyalty experiences that they're expecting, whether that be gamification or experiential loyalty, et cetera. And we've been partnering with a lot of companies that are really rethinking their loyalty, right, in order to meet customers where they're at. And then I think the other area that's really exciting to us is, as channels have really shifted and people have really become, I would say, not just multi-channel, but across-channel, omni-channel, making sure that the same level of experience and expectation that customers have shows up across those channels. So for example, I used to be able to go into a mom and pop store and Joe behind the meat counter knew me. He knew what I wanted. He knew how to give me the product. How do you get that same level of personalization?
Make every store Joe the meat counter.
How do you make every store, but also make every interaction? So, if you're on a digital property, I'm getting the things I want. I'm getting it from first point, whether or not you know me, right? Or I'm using technology and data in the background to really make sure that that's serving up, which is what we do with our personalization platform.
And do you think MasterCard then being a horizontal, right, that crosses all those different vertical retail channels is sort of the secret sauce that makes that kind of possible?
I think there's a couple of secret sauces. I think we're really tech
You're
forward.
allowed to tell us.
Yeah, I think we're really tech forward.
Okay.
I think we've adopted the philosophy that we work with our partners around, which is testing and learning and agility, right? So that gives us, we've invested in spaces that we know are going to be the future, right? Whether that be personalization or loyalty or data and analytics. So I think that's one of our secret sauces. It's the ability to kind of see ahead, right? Use our scale, understand our partners and their needs, right? And make sure that we're making the right cognitive investments, right? To meet them when they're at. But then I think the other component is, we have a tremendous ability to look at what is happening across spend, right? Because our data is an incredible asset, and that data, when it's done in a really rich data principled way, right? That is something that consumers can trust, right? They know. It gives us the ability to see what is happening across markets, what is happening across economies, what is happening across segments, and understand some of those blended nuances that I think have become really difficult in retail. And that's what I would say is one of our other secret sauces.
Yeah, I mean, certainly AI has brought this to the forefront, but technology for some time, you could argue forever, right? But there's such a need for myth busting, right? And separating, truth from fiction and just cutting through hype. And I think, not that we're talking specifically about Gen AI, but AI is certainly part of this equation. Kind of brought to the forefront by ChatGPT. I could say it's, your neighbor Brenda's using it. It's in the culture, right? Versus something like machine learning that's been happening for decades, right? So, but these questions exist, right? At the end of the day, you've got your God's eye view on, what you just described, right? As an ecosystem. Are you hearing hot topics? Are there questions coming up from your clients where you're just sort of having to constantly or repeatedly say, it's not what you think, right? Or maybe look here, because you've essentially got one leg in the future and one leg in the present, right? So like, what are you hearing? What are you saying, maybe?
Yeah, I think we're hearing a lot of common things that have been around for a while, right? I want to increase the engagement of my existing customers. I want to acquire great new customers. I want to, personalize experiences. I want to use data effectively. I think it's the mechanisms that have changed, though, right? So the expectations as consumers have become, I think smarter, right? More cognizant of the way that they interact with retailers and brands. It's the mechanisms that are required, right, are what have changed, right? And the speed to grow and the speed to adapt and the speed to be able to test, learn, move on, and do that in a way that is able to balance increased consumer expectations with the realities of the business. I think that's what's changed the most. So I don't necessarily think that those, again, this is where the human psychology, I don't know if the human psychology factors have changed, right?
We're still a tribal species, right?
Yeah, but I still want to, I still want to walk into a store. I want to feel, or go onto a, website, and I want to feel like you know me. I want to feel like you are able to deliver to me. I want to feel like I'm getting the products and services that are relevant to me. That is basic human psychology and behavior, right? I think it kicked up a notch on the back end of the pandemic because I think people realized how critical it was.
We were starved. Yeah.
We were starved for people. We were starved for a product, right? But I think that what has changed is the speed. I think it's the expectation of innovation. I think it is the technologies that retailers and brands have to grapple with and learn in order to get to those expectations more than necessarily the underpinning foundations.
For sure. Related to psychology then, here's a sort of curveball, which is just when the business hat comes off, right, and you're at home with the family, has this technology changed the way your family interacts made new rituals or, you know what I mean? Like, we all embrace it in different ways. Just kind of curious, off the clock, what does it look like?
Listen, it absolutely has. I have I was just telling you before we started, I have a 12 and 14-year-old girl. It's being their mom and raising future leaders is my favorite job and will always be my favorite job. But I learn every day from them, right? You looked at my nails. I showed you my nails before. Well, my nails are a byproduct of
we hope they
TikTok,
can see them,
right? Because my 14-year-old was like, "Hey, we should get our nails done like this before vacation 2 weeks ago." So, but again, the way that that's serving up is through the technology, right? And that's what they're learning. So we have to be adaptive to that, right? As retailers and brands, we have to change our programs. We have to change the way that customers interact with us because, they still want assurance, right? They still want recommendations, right? They still want to be able to get it quickly, right? But I'm going to get the recommendations via a TikTok influencer, right? That my 14-year-old daughter saw, right? So it's absolutely changed the way that we've interacted as a family too. And thank goodness for technology controls too, so they'll actually talk to me occasionally.
A friend of mine has been using actually letting his daughters use ChatGPT to kind of program their own bedtime stories.
I got my Mother's Day poem via ChatGPT this year. So put in my favorite things and that came out.
Yeah, and so you've got one leg in obviously sort of the future of technology from MasterCard's perspective, right, and really driving change in the retail sector. One other leg firmly planted, in the home life, and so I think that art and science really comes through really well. Do you want to send our audience out with just sort of a go do this or remember this one thing if you forget everything else? Like what's on your mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to remember as, retail has been a tough environment to be in the last couple of years. The reality is consumers are still spending. It's actually a really healthy economy, global economy right now, and consumers are still investing, but they've changed, right? And I think the one thing that I talk to partners all the time about is, you have to be able to change with your customer, right? And so you have to do it in a way that can be efficient for you as an organization, can be effective, right? But you cannot shy away from that change that your customers are expecting. So, whether that be investing in technology that makes you make smarter choices, right? Which we do with our partners via our test and learn platform, or building personalization engines and using that to give served up recommendations via a AI-driven recommender, right? Which we just introduced on our dynamic yield platform called Shopping Muse. Like, these are all things that customers are starting to expect, and so I think what we're going to see is as customers have expected more, there's going to be a bifurcation of companies that are willing to change and willing to try things, and companies that are just stuck and maybe trying to fix something that hasn't worked, right? And this is the time to really innovate. This is the time to shine, right? Because the best innovations and the best companies that have survived these moments have really been those that are rising to the occasion and willing to take chances and invest in technology.
Right. So take chances, lean in because the customer's worth it.
Don't be afraid of change.
Yeah. Customer first. We always land there.
Customer first,
Fantastic.
right? Yeah.
Great. Awesome. Great conversation. Super educational for our audience, for me as well.
Awesome.
This has been another edition of the Global Retail Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Matthew Adam Smith, and this has been Emily Kroner, the Senior Vice President, I'm going to say the whole thing, of Retail and Commerce at MasterCard. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks for being here. Bye. See you next time.